Welcome to the Play with Fire podcast. I'm your host, Ashley McHatton, and you're listening to episode 10. If you've listened or watched any of the past episodes, by now you'll have started to pick up on a theme from the past guests about what ingredients and what steps that they've each taken and what order that they've put them in to find success in their life and business. And today, this episode is a little bit different. We are interviewing a brand new company. They've been in business now a bit over 6 months, and it's a husband and wife team, and they're going to share their story with you about what it's like to start a business. So whether you've been in business a long time or you're thinking about starting one, or maybe you're on the same at the same spot that these two are at, they're going to have tons of insight and different perspectives to bring to it, and they're doing some really great things that I think we can all be either reminded of to keep doing, or the importance of doing them, or things that we can see and add in. I hope that you love this episode. They're full of energy. So if you have already had your coffee, you don't need more with these two. They're on fire. Here is my conversation with Chad and Marissa. All right, well, welcome. Thank you so much for being here, Marissa and Chad. Can't wait to talk to you guys and find out more about what you're doing. First, though, I wanted to jump in, and I did want to ask you, I know we were talking briefly offline, but how long have you guys been in business now? About 6 months in business? A year?
In business about 6 months.
And then you had mentioned that this idea was about a year ago. So what initially started this idea for your business?
Well, so it's actually a little bit more than what the business came to. The idea actually gravitated off of an idea that I had for a slushy cart business. So we live in Hollywood, Florida, which is actually between Fort Lauderdale and Miami. And where we live right now is about 1.5 miles from the beach. So we have like a Margaritaville that was just built a couple years ago, and the beach is very, very busy just throughout the year. So I had an idea that there aren't many places for people to go get slushies, so it's a very family-friendly beach as opposed to like South Beach where it's more adult-friendly. So I just didn't think there were that many options for the kids and the family. And the idea was that we get this slushy cart machine where we're actually making slushy, and then we're pushing it up and down the beach to be able to service the community there. And the idea was, do you remember Book It? So when I was in school, there was a program called Book It where you could read 10 books, and then you would get this little slip of paper, and you would take it into Pizza Hut, and you would get your own personal pan pizza. So it was encouraging reading. And so I came up with the idea that if we could do this slushy cart business, that we would encourage kids to read, to go help the elderly, to rake leaves.
Like random acts of kindness and service for others.
Exactly. And then share it on social media. And after, 2 or 3 or 4, then we would give them a free slushie if they could, show us locally. So I had all this idea kind of set up, and then we started going to the city, and we realized it was regulated very, very heavily because there are some vendors on the beach. So you can't really have a mobile slushie cart without actually having a location on the beach. It was very strict, and that idea just kind of wasn't going to work. So coming from that, we realized we really do enjoy challenging people and trying to motivate people and trying to get people to make the world a better place, essentially, just spread love. And so we were trying to come up with ideas about how to do that. And that's where I came up. Well, the first idea was the Adapt line, actually, that we just launched with the Chameleon, about, trying to be able to adapt to your surroundings, being open-minded. And so that's where the idea originally came from. We were going to call it Chameleon Clothing and try to, really work towards people who are open-minded. And then we found this name Moai, which is the Japanese term for community. So we thought if we could create the brand as Moai and then have individual lines under the Moai brand that represent different people's characteristics, so we knew that the clothing industry is very, very difficult industry to get into, super competitive. And when you look at the bigger brands per se, the quality of clothing, it's all the same. So one brand A and brand B, they have a different logo or they have different coloring or whatever, but a lot of the quality of the clothing is very, very similar. It's really good quality. So we knew based on quality, you don't really go in and just beat other clothing lines based on quality. You have to bring some sort of a message, or you really have to try to trigger people to want to really buy your clothing. And I knew that the only way for us to do that was to be very, very specific and take a big risk to see if this was going to work, essentially. So I knew that we had to be super unique, and this is how I felt that we could be unique. We both are very, very passionate about helping other people, loving on other people, and so that's essentially where the idea came from.
That's awesome. And going back to your reference to Book It, like following you guys on Instagram, I see that you guys talk about self-help books all the time. So like you're still weaving in these things that like these breadcrumbs you've collected along the way, and put it into this business. And like you said, because I noticed right away about you guys is that the apparel line, like you said, is so saturated. Like there's always a clothing company. There's great fashion brands that come in and then go out of business all of the time. And it sounds like you guys started with truly like the brand, like the messaging first. And like, you're like, I know we want to do this message, and okay, if we can't do it with slushies, like maybe we do it with t-shirts. So is that true? Is that how it kind of started?
We had the concept, and we were looking for different carriers to make it happen.
Right.
Exactly.
That's correct.
So far you're about, like you said, 6 months, a year from the idea, and now you're 6 months in business. And has that been like, when do you, like, from you sold your first t-shirt, or when you're like, no, we're doing clothes? What's your measuring stick for that?
So that was essentially when the website was up and running. It took me like, 2 to 3 months researching just website, design, and I'm trying to think of the right word for it, but you have like Wix and Shopify, all the outlets.
Right.
Trying to figure out what outlet specifically would be best for us and how we could navigate it, and which one was the easiest for me to be able to change on my own, and also getting pricing from people who would just design the website from scratch for us, and seeing how user-friendly that would be. So it's a long process, but the website's been up and running for about 6 months now.
And when have you had apparel in there? From day one when it went live?
We did, yes. So we had the hats and the t-shirts, the Moai hat and the Moai t-shirts. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then to get ready for your launch, so I know I've seen you guys and been following you guys before then. So you had already started trying to build your community outside of your local area prior to the launch.
Yeah.
Was
Correct.
that just instinctual, or was the website build already in the works? What was your plan and sort of your big picture view about doing that?
So right when we got our LLC and we came up with the name, that was essentially the same day that we created our Instagram. And a lot of this inspiration came from Gary Vaynerchuk, just reading a lot of him and saying, listen, you just got to start. So we're like, okay, this is what we want to do. We've got to get the Instagram and social media going so that we can create a following. Let's do that. I'll be working on the website over here, but we just have to start producing content, essentially, and that's what it was all about.
And it really was just a matter of starting, because like I'm somewhat of a perfectionist, especially when it comes to like the art side of it, like photography and that type of thing. And it was hard, like, well, how do we start an Instagram when you don't have any pictures of your own apparel, you don't have any photos of yourself or anything like that? And just looking for resources, like, listen, we just have to start with something. And, you know, using sites that allow you to use other people's photography to help build your brand when you don't have much to work with yourself. And it really was just the attitude, instead of, I can't do this, to how can I do it, because I need to do it.
And at that time, we were actually both working full-time jobs. So Moai wasn't at the forefront of our minds, you know, like it has been the past 6 months. Leftover energy. Exactly.
Well, and I think, I mean, that's just congratulations first, because most people think about starting forever. And whether it's getting caught up in the perfectionist side, if that's what they call it, or procrastination, like whatever their word for it is, because like you said, there's all kinds of reasons to stop. Like the website alone can stop you for years. just from either the cost or the lack of tech skills or not figuring, like so many people stop there. And then the other side of it, you know, trying to create a brand when that's going to be the thing that's, again, the core to what you're doing, and anything that you do, any sort of vehicle, which in this case it's apparel, that you're delivering that message. Having, like you said, no pictures is a huge barrier, but you're like, I mean, just to have that mindset shift of like, okay, well, if we don't have all these things, but we're still going forward, then what does that look like?
Right.
I think that's amazing, because so many people just don't shift their mindset. Like they don't make that choice to like this is going to happen either way. So what was it for you guys? Was it because you were working at your 9-to-5s or whatever your full-time jobs are, and we're like, we're committed to this happening and making it work? Or was it, let's play and see? Like, how did you make that decision that basically made the mindset shift that allowed these solutions to sort of come to you?
So it was a long process. It may seem short because of, you know, our life on Instagram, but this has actually been like a 5.5-year process for us. Ever since we got married, which was about 5.5 years ago, we had a mutual desire to do something more with our lives than just work a job that we're not passionate about or that we don't feel is really benefiting anybody except ourselves, or I guess the company that you're working for, obviously you're a benefit to. But that starting point for us, it was, okay, we can't do it now because we don't have the financial resources to do that. So how do we create a step-by-step process starting now so that this can be possible in the future? So we've been living below our means, way below our means for 5 years, living from tiny studio apartment, sharing one vehicle, using a bicycle for me to get to work, sharing one cell phone that we're recording off of right now. Very, very minimal cost, not doing a lot of extravagant things, because to us, the opportunity to do something more was more important than the in the now moment of enjoying things. So starting back 5 years ago, we started making plans for being an entrepreneur at one point and cycling through all these different ideas. Like, he's an idea machine. Like, he just doesn't stop. It's like every night, like, oh, what about this idea? What about this idea? And being able to come to the point of creating Moai, like he talked about the slushy cart, there were also other ideas that kind of we stole a tiny piece from. Like, each idea held something that brought us to the purpose that we were able to put together into Moai. So it was really not just like this one big idea that happened. It was small pieces here and there that along the years came together. And what happened that actually forced this into motion was last year, because he does have so many ideas, we would always talk about them and be like, you know, that's a great idea, but then we never do anything with it. It would just kind of pass along the wayside because it is scary to invest money, invest time into something you have no idea if it's going to work or not or be accepted. And so last year we decided that by the end of that year, we would invest in at least something because we needed to stop procrastinating and saying, we will, and just actually do it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We start with something else and we keep going. So since this was last year, it was in, I think, September, October, that we decided, okay, this is the one. This is the one idea that has held the most meaning, that we finally put together, that's something we're both super passionate about, and that we have a little bit of areas of expertise in from past experiences. So this was the one we're going to go for, because we said we're going to do it this year, and voila, we did.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing. And I think it's super important too that you share that you had this idea, you made a small pivot, and then you went for it. But like you just said, Marissa, like it was also the 5 years in the making of, like, we knew we wanted to do this. But what I find, like, it gives me chills, like that you had the foresight and the discipline to make those sacrifices to make this happen one day, so that you like position yourself. So when that opportunity, the right idea, the straw of like that broke the camel's back to say like, this is the year we're doing it, that you had positioned yourself so well, like personally, to be able to say, okay, like let's do it. Because most people also, like, and this is super generalized, but like don't want to suffer, don't want to be uncomfortable, like would rather go out for like the nice dinner because they're tired and they work hard than, well, we could just have ramen together tonight instead and with a candle, like like that could, I think that's incredible. And to do it for that long too, again, like you said, there's no guarantee, I think is amazing. And so along that time, like, what were your friends saying? Like, what were your family saying? Like, were they like, oh, just come out with us, or like, oh, you guys are weird, or like, what was the chatter going on in the community that you had, like your immediate community around you?
So that's another interesting story in that, so Marissa and I moved away from home right after we got married. So we both grew up in the same small town in Michigan. That's where we're both originally from. And so we moved down to South Florida not knowing anybody. So being down here, we didn't really have any friends. And I think that's actually one of the reasons that Moai is so special to us, is that community is really important, coming from the Midwest and being around people you always know. And that's one of the big things in my heart, is always having a community, always trying to make friends, always trying to get to know people. So it wasn't like we had a bunch of friends who were like, oh, come out. It was kind of like just us, and that was really it. Our family, they were super scared. Like, Miami, that's a scary city. Like, it's dangerous. People bad stuff is always happening there. Like, why would you do that? And we come from a very, very small town in the Midwest where 30 miles from us, there's a city that is still horse and buggy. Like, it's a great big Amish community.
Wow.
So we're talking, this was a big, big adventure. And like, just a lot of people didn't want us to move, just fear for us and everything. So we didn't really ever have to deal with, people thinking, oh, why aren't you hanging out or anything like that. But
you already done your big jump by just moving.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was also kind of part of that shift in process, because we knew that being down here held a lot more opportunities for us to spread the brand, because there's just so many more people down here. And also, moving down here was the best, like one of the best decisions that we've made personally and together, because it forced us to grow so much individually. Because like you said, we grew up with this amazing community. Our families are 20 minutes apart, big families, and everybody knows each other. Everybody takes care of each other. So if you get a flat tire, you've got 10 people you can call. Down here, it's like, no, you got to fend for yourself. Like, you don't even know if you can trust your mechanic, because there's just so much stuff going on. And it really forced us to become who we really are. I think sometimes when you're in a community, you kind of just all mold. You can sometimes all mold together. It's not a diverse community. And that's one of the things that I find really special about Moai, is that, yes, we all have one thing in common, and that is the desire to be better every single day in at least something. But that something for everybody is different. Yeah. For you, maybe, it's running that 100-miler that I don't know how you do. But for somebody else, it's overcoming their diet and eating unhealthy food. For someone else, it's business related. It's so diverse that there's no need to feel confined or feel like you can't express yourself, because there's not like this rule of who you have to be as a Moai.
I love that. And I love hearing too that, like you said, it's so diverse, but you guys again have a very narrow, like I have a rack to like hang your hook on, so to speak, you're still very clear with like everybody wants to overcome a challenge, versus like it has to be like, oh no, it's just athletics, or oh no, we just want to help people. Like yours is just like the struggle that makes us all human, and everybody's journey is individual through that, but there's like home is still with you guys, like within that community. So I think that's incredible. So we already went over a while. I'm looking at I had so many questions for you guys, and so I'm trying not to talk your ear off all day. So going back, so not everybody works with a business partner, let alone a spouse. And so, like you said, one of the advantages and possible disadvantages that you guys had not knowing anybody and just having each other, you didn't have all that outside noise, but then you also had the individual growth that you guys were going through personally. And then together as a couple, and then now you've layered on a business on top of it. So how has that been? Like for you guys, is it easy having a business partner? Are there challenges? Like, how do you guys face that? Because if things are going wrong in the tech department, like you can't go home and bitch about it at the end of the day because like that's one of you.
That's absolutely right. And doing this together has had a lot of positives and it's had a lot of negatives, but those negatives have given us the opportunity to see how we need to overcome them. For example, we just got sunglasses. So trying to decide what sunglasses we were going to get, what shades they would be. I have a personal preference. Marissa has her own personal preference. And sometimes those don't go together very well. So when I order, a bulk order of sunglasses, and she's like, I don't like these colors. Then we have to just try to discuss further. Okay, what don't you like about them? And then we have to try to go to the public and see, okay, we have to be unbiased in that. It doesn't really matter what I like or what she likes. It's what the customers like. And so going on with those parameters. Also, when there's a disagreement, business-wise, like okay, you forgot to do the taxes this year. Like, what happened there? And, we have a big fine or something like that. We have to make sure that the business that happens doesn't carry over into our relationship life. So as business partners, it's one thing like, okay, we got to fix this mistake. We got to make sure and try to make sure it doesn't happen again. But in our marriage, we can't be holding each other accountable for the mistakes we make in business inside of our marriage. So that has been difficult.
It's been a learning process.
Yeah.
For sure. Like at the very beginning, there were no clearly defined boundaries. So it was like a confrontation of ideas on the business side was like just arguing in a marriage is what it felt like. And we had to realize, like, listen, I'm talking to you as a business partner. I'm not talking to you as a spouse right now. And not necessarily that it's less loving or anything like that, but that I'm critiquing you or I'm critiquing what happened because as a business partner, this is what I would do because this is a business and it has to function properly and it has to make sense. So addressing things, which sometimes we just have to verbally say that, like, listen, right now we're about to talk about this is business, so let's keep it. Once we're done, we're done, and then we go back to being husband and wife, but not carrying it back and forth one to the other. If we're having an argument on the marriage side, we can't just not talk about the business for the day because we don't want to talk to each other. Like, we have to overcome that. So like he's saying, it's kind of forced us to grow because we do have to communicate on the business side. So if we're having a confrontation or something like this, like, listen, we have to work this out right now because we have business to talk about. So it's been challenging, but it has been a huge learning process, and it's only helping us to get better on both sides.
And another example is that Marissa is very, very good with the social media, especially Instagram. She does a great job of connecting with customers and being able to really have lasting conversations and stuff like that. Whereas me on Instagram, I'm just not as good at it as like trying to know what to say. So I try to add value with coming up with new designs and stuff like that. And one of the struggles that I've had personally is seeing Marissa kick butt on Instagram and really working on our following. And sometimes I feel like I'm not doing as much. So in our marriage, it's just like, oh my gosh, like I'm trying to lead this, I'm trying to do this, but I'm just not carrying my weight. And so that has been very, very stressful for me and trying to deal with that. So I'm trying to come up with new ways. Okay, so now maybe we can start wholesaling the sunglasses and me going out and doing sales calls just because I want the business to do well, and she's really good at the social media aspect, and I need to try to generate income some other way.
Well, we have two totally different strengths. Mm-hmm. And that's what's awesome about it being a partnership because I could not do this on my own. I don't have the knack for design the way that he does. I don't have the knack for just basic business common sense like I do on a certain level, but he's a whole other level. And that's where I just like resign everything to his judgment. If I have a perspective on something, we talk about it, but ultimately I trust him in that area way more than I would trust myself. So for me, like, it makes the business not be half as stressful because he's taking half of it and I'm taking half of it. So for people that are doing it completely by themselves, like, I super applaud them because that is extremely challenging. I can only imagine, just because I know how difficult it is as having a partner. But yeah, being able to be in partnership with him, it's really the only person I would ever be in partnership with. And it's really just helped me see what strengths that he has and be able to value that at a totally different level, because I've worked, we both worked tons of different jobs and we've never really seen that many people care as much as I feel that we care in the same aspect about having meaning, having a really strong work ethic, being dedicated, being reliable. And when you finally have like a coworker that matches you in that aspect, it's like, that's coworker everything is awesome. So to finally have that is something pretty special.
Right. Like, I mean, a couple of days ago, we had to make the decision that Marissa is the one who's going to be able to deal with customers. She's a lot better at dealing with customers, where sometimes I'm just really cut and dry and I work on technicalities. I'm super strict. So sometimes that can come off as customers as not being friendly or anything like that. But it's also good when I'm dealing with manufacturers and saying, listen, I asked you if the sunglasses were polarized before we ordered these. They're not polarized. Like, well, can you just take these and we will charge you, 50% less? Like, no, I asked all these questions before it come in. You guys are providing us with these products. They need to be how I asked them to be. And she's just a lot better. Okay, I will deal with the customers, because if there's problems or things like that, she's just so much better at, okay, this happened, we understand, and just solving the problem, where sometimes I just get too cut and dry. And like I said, I think the customers would just take that like, wow, she's a real jerk. And I don't mean to be like that, I guess. It's just,
you're just very straightforward. So that comes it comes in handy for negotiations, which is very essential in a business. So it's like back end and front end, and you need both, absolutely.
Right.
I think that's great. And it's, I'm super jealous that you have somebody to do the opposite stuff and to figure it out. Because sometimes business partners, like I've seen, get people that they're two of the same, which made them get along and like have the same vision. But then when it came to actually executing or having, the needs filled of those holes that neither of them had, then things would fall apart. So, and it sounds too like one of your strengths is, I mean, from the slushy example to now shirts and, hats and sunglasses, that your ability to adapt and, treat your business as if it's a conversation and a marriage, where it's like what's working, what's not, and being able to change it along the way has been really pivotal as well, it sounds like.
That's exactly right. And so for me, from my past business experiences and the businesses that I've tried to start with friends and family, the one key issue that I've always had is communication. And that is, you don't want to hurt someone's feeling by saying this, or you guys, sometimes everybody's just always kind of tipping the line about, okay, well, I like it this, but I'm willing to do this just because we're friends. Whereas in husband and wife, we know each other so well that it's just like, listen, I'm just going to be completely 100% honest. And that has been huge in us being able to work back and forth successfully, as opposed to when I was with friends and families, just always not really being 100% honest and open. And I think that has just caused a lot of conflict in, with my previous businesses and other people's businesses as I see them working together. It's like, well, you're talking about your coworker to me. Are you sharing these things with him? It's like, well, no, I don't want to hurt his feelings. Well, what about 3 years down the road when the business is non-existent because you guys weren't communicating properly? And that's been something that's just been so special, I think, for us.
Yeah. And I think that's always the hardest part, is communication. Like, like you said, for you, it's not being able to communicate well as how you perceive it with the customers, and then her on the manufacturing side. It's like, it's so hard to have some, those hard conversations. And the fact that you guys have to have those in order for your marriage to work definitely takes down that barrier in business.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go back because, again, like, I love your brand because it's about community and overcoming challenges, and I'm a sucker for a challenge. And but how important do you think, big picture all the way down to like your business, how important is community to somebody's success? Because like you guys mentioned that you guys both have strong work ethics and you have like this brand that you're building, but that still doesn't guarantee that you're going to be profitable, or, you know, like that just means you're going to work really hard to try. But like, how important is the piece of community, not just for your brand, but for anybody that has a business or a passion?
That's a great question. And so for us, community is, for me, it's absolutely everything. Whether this brand is successful and profitable because of community, I'm not 100% sure what will happen. We're so early, we're so new into the market. We don't know how that's going to do. But I just love people so much, and that's where I get my fire from, is just hanging around people. Like, she likes to travel, she likes to go places. But for me, if I could just go somewhere and have an intellectual conversation and be able to talk to people and find out about them, and if we're just interested in the same things. Like last week, we went to a real estate meeting, and for me, it was like the best thing that's happened in like the last 5 months, because these people were all talking about things that I was interested in. I was super engaged, and it's just my everything. Like, I absolutely love sports, so that gives me another avenue to go out and meet people and talk about things. And that's how I research things absolutely to death so that I can try to be an expert in them. And then when I get to be an expert, when I meet other people who are experts in them, it's just like, oh yes, like, okay, this is going to be awesome. We're going to talk. And we also just love helping other people. So we came, like we said, we came from a small town back in Michigan, and that mindset is, you know, if there were people inside of our community that needed help redoing their basement or something, we would go during the week and go help them with their basement. They wouldn't pay us or anything like that, but we loved being around people so much that helping people out was more important to us than, you know, watching TV at night or just doing something like that. So for me, community is just, it's my everything. I absolutely love community.
I think for me, the concept of community actually stems from my family and the way that I grew up. I was very, very fortunate to have an amazing childhood and to have like the most supportive family. I grew up half a mile from my grandparents. You know, everybody was super close geographically, and because of that, we were extremely close, you know, physically and emotionally, and just supporting each other in a really special way that I think a lot of people don't get to experience when they grow up. And also just having people in a family doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to support you or that they even understand you or that they get you or want to be around you. So I think for a lot of people, my passion for community comes from realizing that not everybody has what I had growing up, and that I attribute everything that I've become to how I was raised, and having that safety net. And when I failed, I had people to cry with me. I had people to cheer me on when I was terrified of, you know, my first job and you know, education and all these things, because I'm naturally very, very shy. You know, like, I think I'm working on myself so much through this process because it's not natural for me. But having people that really pushed me inside my family, like, I wouldn't be who I am today without that. So I guess when I'm on social media and I'm talking to our followers and just random people that I find throughout the day, it's trying to be that family for them that I had. Because I think that if everyone had that or a piece of that they would feel just that momentum that, yes, I can do this. Like, I can change my life any way that I want to. Just having that confidence because you have this team, you have this support. Like, all the way back in history, everything was tribes, everything was groups of people. You don't ever really read about, it's very rare that you read about just this one person who had no connections, you know, who did amazing things. It's because they had this incredible story of how they either came out of something and they connected with other people and they made this community or this tribe and they did great things, or they were able to live happily, or, you know, just so many different aspects that I think having a family or a community is essential for.
And so a couple of weeks ago, we started something called a rush hour refresh, where Marissa and I put a quote on essentially a poster board, and we've been standing out in like the little barrier grass island median between two very major intersections here in Hollywood, Florida, and just to give people encouragement. And so last week, I think we've done it 3 times so far. And last Friday, we had people who were going the opposite direction, honking and saying, "Hey," like this to us. They weren't able to see what our new sign said or anything, but they knew what we were there doing. And that really, really spoke big to me about community, is that, wow, like we're actually impacting people and changing their days by bringing a smile to their face. And secondly, like they actually know who we are now, and they like care enough to say and honk and like are waving. And it was just like, that just really, really hit me. Like it was super special to me. I really enjoyed it.
Especially in a place like South Florida, just because there's so many people.
Yeah.
Like you think, oh, I'm never going to see the same person twice. But we had someone roll down their window, and she's like, "Are you here every day? Like I've seen you a couple times this weekend." It was just cool. Like, oh wow, like these people actually have seen us before. Obviously, you know, like work routes or home routes or things like that are repeated. But it was really cool to finally just get that sense of knowing someone, even though you don't really know anything about them yet. You just know that you've seen them multiple times and that they are identifying with what we're trying to do and inspiring people.
Well, I think that's one crazy and amazing. But it's also, I mean, that's also an in-person version of what's happening online too, because like, but you got the immediate feedback where a lot of times, you know, like posting on Instagram, we'll use that because I know that's the platform you guys hang out at the most. Like people see you or you see other people coming by and you might like something or be like, oh, that's cool, and keep scrolling, but you don't realize the impact that you're having on somebody. And where you got immediate feedback from, like you said, like there's so many people in South Florida that like now people are recognizing you and like taking the time to also acknowledge you, not just like, oh, there's those crazy people again. Like they're letting you know, hey, I see you crazy people, like, which is awesome. And I also think it's important that like I'm glad that you guys saw it, because I also think it's important that we don't always get that recognition or that feedback and knowing that we're making a difference when we actually are, because, you know, for every like, what was it, 3 or 4 or 10 people honking at you, there had to have been another like good half dozen, if not more, that recognized you also, or, you know, shaking their heads or smiling or telling their friend on their drive home about you. Like they're there again. They don't want anything. They're just smiling all the time. I think that's brilliant.
I know, especially like you said, with social media, you don't really know. And I guess doing the rush hour refresh was super exhilarating for us. Like afterwards, we were like, felt like we were on a high. Like it was just like, oh, this is amazing. And it really is. It was special for us because we did get to see that recognition right away. And sometimes we do doubt, because to us, the meaning of community is really important. But we don't really know. Is it important to everybody? You know, maybe people already have a community. Maybe they feel like they don't need community. And so sometimes you kind of second guess as a business, like, is what we're doing, what we feel is needed, is it really needed? And you're absolutely right. When people do, you know, take the time to comment on Instagram, that's why we throw a party, because it's like, wow, someone took the time, because time is so valuable. That's the most important thing to people, is time. And when someone takes the time to acknowledge that what we said or what we wrote or the picture that we shared, that it impacted them or helped them think of something that was important, like that's like the best feedback ever. And being able to do that with the rush hour refresh, even though it's smiles and honks, it's super special.
I think it's fantastic and brilliant. Are you guys posting any of that online, or is there a hashtag people are following you for that?
So yes, and actually, so one of the signs usually has the hashtag, and then we've actually had people who were driving by, they wrote down the hashtag, and then later that evening, they're like, hey, I saw you guys, and so they're finding us just from searching that hashtag.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
See, and I'm like, I think that was so smart, just for not only that community and what you're adding value to them, but again, for you guys to actually see that back, because I think any sort of creative or, you know, person that listening to this that's either building a business or has a side hustle or just has something that they do that other people maybe don't understand. And again, like if you're putting things out on social media and trying to build a tribe that way, where you're not getting that, like that direct feedback back, where we get to see somebody's like nonverbal communication, or you get the honks, or you get the like, what are you doing? Or you don't know. And then, you have that story or those voices in your head telling you, either down one path or the other, like, oh, you're crazy, or like, oh, this is going awesome. But, without that feedback, it's really hard. So I think that was really a fun way to test it and see what's working.
And it's great exercise because it's so hot down here.
Yeah.
It's like 90 degrees. What we do is we time the light, so we walk the whole time it's green, or it's red.
Right, yeah.
Sorry, and then when it's green, we don't want to distract people, so we would hate to cause an accident or something like that. So we turn and we run back to the beginning, and by that time it's red again. So then we walk and we run and we walk and we run. So it's great exercise at the same time. It's like a double bonus.
That's amazing. So switching gears a little bit, and we're almost out of time. I don't want to take too much of your time, but so we talked about community, but I also wanted to get your ideas on competition too, because like you said, you went into a market, like you tried the slushy and beach vendor industry, and apparently that was super restrict and competitive just because of all the, all the blocks and stuff at the city. But how important is it to have competition in a space? Like, do you think that it helps you? Do you think it hurts you? Do you feel like you're competing with yourself or against people? How do you guys perceive competition?
Well, for me, I wish that there would be more competition in this space of people who are, let's say, doing motivational clothing specifically, other than people like Gary Vee or Tony Robbins, who they're motivational speakers and they sell books, and then they have clothing lines.
Right.
So it's awesome that they became a public speaker first, and now they can sell shirts through that avenue that they have. But for us, we're just trying to sell clothing and be a motivational clothing line. So the struggle I have is that with people with fashion is, do people buy clothes because they absolutely love how it works or how it looks, or do they buy it because they have a connection with it? And the only competition that I've tried to correlate this with is a sports team. Mm-hmm. So let's take the New York Yankees. If you're a New York Yankees fan and you see someone else who's a New York Yankees fan, they have that instant connection of their Yankees fan. It's like, yeah, hey, and then they can talk about anything. And that's what we're trying to do with the logo, is that, wow, that's somebody wearing the Moai logo. That represents someone who's into personal improvement and trying to be positive. So I think that's just our biggest struggle, is I'm trying to find competitors. I'm trying to find people within our same market and trying to see what is it that these guys are doing to try to gain ground and gain followers and just trying to build their business.
I think competition is twofold from my perspective. And that is that competition forces you to find a way to stand out. So I think that competition, just like in a race, if someone is extremely long-legged or extremely fast, you have to work that much harder to beat them at the race. And not that it's necessarily a competition of win versus lose, but trying to push the message out there further, it forces you to be creative in ways. Like, I don't think we would be as creative, possibly, with some aspects of what we want to do and what we have done, if the clothing industry wasn't so competitive. And although we don't necessarily have a niche that is identical to ours that we feel we've found yet, I'm sure there is, but we haven't, it's not known as much. I feel that, I guess my hope is that there will become more, because one, we can learn from each other. So it's still the community that, although yes, you are competitors, you do ultimately learn from each other's mistakes and what works, what doesn't work. And two, if there was more competition, I feel that that would be a great sign that companies and industries are starting to realize that the customer need is a lot more than just trying to sell them something. It's offering value. I feel that a lot of companies forget what value really is, and that they focus more on just selling products and finding ways to even manipulate the customer to buy something that they don't really need. And that's been something that has been really strong to me, is that we're not trying to manipulate people. If anything, we're not even really asking yet for sales. What we're doing is we're trying to just offer value. And then if people find that that changed their life, or it helped them, or it meant something to them, and they want to reciprocate that back to us, that would be amazing. But it's not something that we're trying to, pull the wool over anyone's eyes, or that I feel sometimes industries can do just to try to make a buck. And I feel that as there becomes more and more competition, it forces other companies to start adding meaning back into products, instead of just allowing products to be products without really offering any value at the same time.
How do you define value?
I mean, value, I think, is defined by those who receive it. So what I think is valuable is totally different than what Chad thinks is valuable and what you think is valuable. But I think that at least in our area, that value is offering someone the ability to feel like they can make a change. Because ultimately, life is just a series of moments that it is what we make of it. And if we can encourage someone to make those moments better for themselves, whatever that looks like, that's sometimes the best value that there can be, because value of a product lives and dies with the product. But the value that you can add to your life, whether it's education or learning about yourself, or it's improving your health, or it's improving your mindset, that is as long as you live. So that is the longest lasting value that I think anyone could ever give.
So for me, it seems like, based off of the news and the things that have been happening in the U.S., is that some people are in a very bad spot emotionally, just with where they're at, maybe not having a lot of friends, feeling alone. And so for us, I want to be able to connect with people who aren't in a good spot emotionally and offer them support. Like, listen, we love you. You're a human being. We value your opinion. You matter, and we want people to know that they matter. And hopefully, maybe it's someone living who wasn't going to be living, or something like that. Just changing people's lives, whether they buy our clothes or they don't. We want to impact people, just to realize that you can change your emotions. You just have to get out there. You have to try to connect with other people and express yourself and share things. Sometimes you're going to cry. Sometimes you may look silly by sharing your stories and stuff like that. But there are going to be people who do care and who want to hear your story.
Yes, I think that's amazing. And to wrap it up with my final question, like, I always ask people, what do you think the difference is between those that, I guess I have two questions, those that make it and those that don't? And so start with that, but then I would really like to know what advice you have for people that are maybe thinking about doing something, whether it's starting a business or running a 10K if they thought that they couldn't, or connecting with others, but with whatever somebody is considering pursuing as they're listening to this, or, whether it's a passion, hobby, business. What do you think the difference is between those that find success and those that don't?
Sure. That's a really good question. I'm trying to think of how to answer that. I guess in my perspective, when it comes to being successful in a business sense, it really comes down to how much you're willing to give of yourself into it, because it's not just this easy process. And I think even in my own perspective, previous to having this business, it was like, being self-employed is going to be a lot easier than this, job that's frustrating and all these things that, I'm experiencing now, the 9 to 5, when in reality, when you run your own business, you're working like nonstop, like it's double to triple the amount of work. So applying yourself and being fully dedicated to something and seeing it through, I think is probably one of the most important, because I think a lot of people, including myself, struggle with wanting to give up when you don't get that immediate response and you don't see people like, woohoo, jumping up and down because you came up with this idea. And being willing to realize that building a brand and building a community or building whatever it is that your business is centered around does take time. And time is hard to swallow sometimes because it's nothing you can change. It's just a matter of it taking time. But I think the second thing for me is having a passion for what you do, because it shows. And there's tons of things that we could have done that I honestly probably wouldn't have been very passionate about. And it would be hard to communicate that through a video or through a podcast or anything else. Something that you're not passionate about is eventually going to fade, I personally feel, because you can only give of yourself into something that you're not passionate about for so long before you just burn out and you're like, I'm done. I don't have anything left to give. I've given my all. So when you're passionate about something, you actually gain energy from doing it. Even though it physically can be exhausting, you gain that emotional fire that keeps you going, because you know that what you're doing has purpose, it has meaning. So not only are you giving meaning to other people, but you're actually receiving meaning at the same time, because you're doing something that is fulfilling versus something that just generates cash flow.
Right.
Yeah, so I agree with the passion. And I see so many people on Shark Tank, I'll take for example, is that it's to make it or break it, where they're either going to do well or they're not. And it seems like there's people out there that are trying to be entrepreneurs because they want to make more money, or they don't want to have to work a 9-to-5 job. They just don't want to work for a boss, and they want to be able to travel the world. And that's the wrong perspective to look at being an entrepreneur, is that if you're not able to be as creative as you want to be, or if you're super hardworking and the people you're working with aren't pushing you to be better and go further, that's what makes someone successful. Also, it has to be someone who I believe they have to be able to prepare. They have to make preparations. If you want to be an entrepreneur in 6 months, 12 months, then you have to start making those preparations, whether it's, really working on your website, or if it's saving up money. If you're making good income doing something you don't enjoy, live below your means right now. Use Groupon to go out to eat.
Shop on eBay.
Right. Don't be going out buying fancy clothes, but making preparations so that you can either, one, leave your job and have money set aside financially to be able to get you by for 2-3 years, or to be able to step back a little bit from your job, maybe go to part-time or something, so that you can put enough energy into both of those, your current job and into whatever it is you would like to pursue as an entrepreneur.
I think those are great. And so to end on, what advice do you guys have? If those are the things that are different, what's one thing that you would tell somebody to do today if they came up to you? And again, if it was starting a job, or if it was going to be, running the 10K, or trying to figure out how to make slushies happen on that beach, what's one piece of advice you'd tell them to do today that they can leave with?
I think one of the biggest things that got us going was the concept of starting now, even if it is small, because if we hadn't taken that advice ourselves from other people that were saying that to us, we wouldn't have never started, because it is very daunting to feel like you need to have all your ducks in a row, and our ducks just flat out are not in a row. They're in a circle, in a triangle, they're all over. But the point is that that's a part of what helps us be entrepreneurs, because we have to learn how to function and adapt when those ducks are not in a row. And that's what actually helps you be creative, and it helps you grow, because half of our ideas that we come up with for posts or for sharing the brand, they come from flat out mistakes. This was a terrible situation, but wow, this is actually a really good life principle that we can actually not only learn ourselves, but hopefully share it with other people. So not having your ducks in a row is, I think, very important to start out. That it's okay to not have everything perfect and not even really know where you're going to go with it, but know that you want to do this and that you have to start in order to get where you eventually want to be.
And so I would say tracking your ideas, whether it be having a journal or having a phone. Whenever I had creative ideas, I needed to start jotting them down, because I was having so many that they were easy to forget. You start writing down all of these things, all of these ideas, and then you start thinking about, well, how can I make this happen? And that gets you to start thinking about more and more and more things, and then the marketing and how I'm going to build the website. And it just starts getting you thinking, whereas if you essentially forget about it, then that idea just goes way off into your mind and you're not able to think about it at all. So by doing that, you're able to then look at all your ideas and make the best decision that you have. Make an informed decision like, wow, this actually sounds really good. I came up with a good idea. And then the next thing is to try it. Just like when you go to the gym, somebody's never been to the gym. They just start trying things, and if they don't lose weight doing this, or they don't feel healthy or gain muscle doing this, then they try something else. And keep trying new things. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to fail. But make sure you're learning from those mistakes and those failures and trying to implement new procedures to try to make yourself better or your business better.
I love it. Thank you guys so much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us and asking us to do this. We really enjoy just getting to talk with people and sharing our story. It's a great pleasure for us to be able to do something like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you guys again.
Yes.
Thank you so much for listening. Weren't those two amazing? There's no way that those two aren't going to be successful in what they do, whether they stick with an apparel line or if it grows and morphs into something else. If you've heard any of the past episodes, or if you're hearing this for the first time, welcome. But if you're hearing this for the first time, you can just see how systematic they are. And even when they're testing things, that they're very smart about their approach, and they're doing this now full time. So go over, give them a like, go smash their Instagram and just blow it up with love and affection for them. It's over at Moai Apparel. And then you can also check out their website at moaiapparel.com. And in the show notes over at Play with Fire Podcast, I'll be linking all of these things. And there'll also be a vlog attached. And if you're watching this episode, check out in the show notes here below as well. There's a vlog where I did of an unboxing. I went and tested their products. I unboxed it. And then I ended up, spoiler, ordering more. So I'm a fan of them, what they're doing, but also their stuff. So go check that out too. It's short, it's fun. It's, more of me rambling with way too much coffee in my system as per usual. So go have a great week ahead. Thank you again for listening, and I will be in your ears again next week.